power, their spaceships, the lot, the computers, everything gone. They suffered. Their numbers were reduced as well. That's why it didn't get the end game done then. So, I don't know how much time we have left, but let's just go as much as we can. There was a point then. Do you think that these people would just sit around and do nothing about it? Their agenda has become then the moving of mankind forward to the point where the super technological hardware that was destroyed in the War of the Gods could be remanufactured. Some instruments and weapons survived, and these were sequestered in underground chambers and in temple precincts referred to as the Holy of the Holies. To keep everybody else away from it, you know. So they give it this holy bit slant. You know. No, I thought God works through people to people. He doesn't need objects to work through. That already makes me suspicious. I'm not saying that minerals and other things don't have power. Of course they do. But you're talking about God, you know, it's immediate, it's direct, you know. So this is what this was done. They'd build a temple. They'd build what we now know as a temple or a church. And they'd build it, you know, with different chambers or underground chambers. And then they'd say that we're putting in there the holiest of things. All they are is a big building to protect what's left of this technological hardware that we now know as some sacred relic or something like that. You've got to read behind the lines. In Welsh, in the Gaelic tradition, they have a group of people called the Perelt. Now the Perelt is a fraternity of powerful druids who practice metallurgy in the caverns deep beneath the earth, who fashion artifacts like the Cauldron of Power, as well as instruments known as the Gifts of the Gods, which were guns, by the way, weapons. Combs Beaumont, he says, I have said comparatively little in regard to the prehistoric science in weapons, including firearms, although it is manifest that they have played the most vital part in ancient power politics, as we term it in modern days. And the possession of knowledge of metallurgy must have been one of the most urgent yet secret objects on the part of those who desire to rule the ancient world. In analyzing the past, I cannot overstress how vital and important is always the problem of weapons. Yeah, and when we're reading the Bible, we need to remember that the rod and the staff and many other terminologies have to do with actually power weapons. Now, what we have to understand is that the tremendous death toll of all the flora and the fauna and the animals, and if you read my dossier, I have quotes of all the devastating, even from Charles Darwin, and lots of talks about what actually took place on this earth in greater detail. But it was decided by the sons of the serpent and their Adamic entourage, whatever was left on Lemuria, and they were scattered. They realized that these guys, these alien masters that they've been fighting, probably still a lot of them are surviving and are going to be after them. So it was decided at this time that, for safety's sake, that they would spread out in small contingents to the rest of the known planet at that time. And this is what, ladies and gentlemen, you hear about with the coming of the gods, or the coming of culture to the four corners of the earth, and how surprisingly similar the languages, the customs, the dances, and the belief systems are. Of course they're the same. It's the same race taking it there. And then if they went to a certain place and maybe met some other group of people, well, then they would absorb, they'd move in. And this happened in waves as well. But it was done for safety's sake, so that they knew at least if, some of us are killed, or some of us don't survive, some of what we have, knowledge, which came from some of the sons of the serpent, they were still living at that time, it at least will be preserved. Now the other gang, I'd say 50, some people say the Council of 13. Some people believe that only the Dark Brotherhood, only 13 of them remained. I think that's a little light, maybe later on, but there may be about 50 of these beings left. They did the opposite. While the other ones were diversifying, they were condensing. And they condensed at the new equator of the planet Earth, around what we would call now the Middle East, specifically Mesopotamia, Sumeria. And they started creating their empires. They congressed at that place and started building the empires that we know today to be of historical post-Diluvian time. And isn't it true that from the building of those empires comes what we know as historical time? And aren't all those empires based on bloodshed, murder, repression, and inhuman things? There's a reason. Find out who's the back of it. Isn't it the time from that when we get patriarchy, gender dichotomy, class dichotomy, urban living, which is totally unnecessary, the meat diet, overpopulation, all of the things that plague our societies today come out of a specific time and date. We've got to find out who was behind those empires, why there was so much bloodshed, who was doing what to whom. And in their empire situation, they had an agenda that seemed to us to just be totally random. In Job it says, He increaseth the nations and destroyeth them again. You see, up they go and down they come. He enlargeth the nations and then straighteneth them again. This has been the agenda for 11,000 years. Build nations, build cities, get your empire building again. They have less people, they have less amount of themselves physically, and they got no hardware. They're put back, in their terminology, thousands and thousands of years they put themselves back. Manly Palmer Hall, he says, to repress rebellion is to maintain the status quo, a condition which binds the mortal creature in a state of intellectual or physical slavery. But it is impossible to chain man merely by slaving his body. The mind also must be held, and to accomplish this, fear is the accepted weapon. The common man must fear life, fear death, fear God, fear the devil, and fear mostly the overlords, the keepers of his destiny. So that's what these religious people have been doing. They can't hold a gun to your head. Well, in my country they do that, but they can't do it to the rest of the world. So they do it, remember, through affecting its environment. Through fear. You fear everything. And let's see. The sons of the serpent merged out. I wanted to talk about the monuments again. A lot of times when, because none of these original beings exist anymore, by the way, right? The original masters, alien masters, even though they had very long lifespans, none of them are alive today, and neither are any of the original sons of the serpent. All that is left now is people who are their bloodlines, right? Their DNA bloodlines. And when you identify with the alien DNA part of you, this is where you get the inhumanity, the evil, the serial killing, right? All of those things that are pernicious in society, even on a moral, they're just the people we don't like. You meet somebody, you just go, I don't like that person. Something about them I just don't like. And inside ourselves, those aspects of ourselves we don't like. This is the inner Armageddon between the alien and the human DNA that's been at battle for years. You know all the mythologies? Anybody familiar with the mythologies of the world about the twins? The dark-haired twin, the light-haired twin, right? The combat between Cain and Abel, Jesus and Satan, and so on, Arthur and Mordred, you know. This is, again, a description between the two people. Remember the tree of good and evil? Both sides have this knowledge of the tree of life, but both are an antithesis to each other. Right? Professor Moriarty, Sherlock Holmes, I mean, it's even in fiction, Hamlet, and it goes on and on and on. This dichotomy that we love so much in fiction. But it's coming from a symbol from somewhere. So the people that are alive today are those who have these two strains inside of ourselves, from Homo Atlantis. And when we decide within ourselves which side to go on, we can make that decision inside ourselves, but some have it very strongly. So it might sound like a strange thing to say, but a lot of the rulers of the world, the people who are doing these atrocities in the world, that don't seem to worry about putting, you know, the whole of the earth into slavery to get what they want, they are aligning very strongly. They have a very strong connection to the alien DNA in them when they're born. And then the great masters and the teachers and the healers, they have a stronger human connection opened. You see? The Beethovens, the Mozarts, the Handels, who just are so amazingly genius and create this amazing work in music and art and so on. And then there's the agents of destruction in the world. Obviously they're coming from more from the alien side. How much time do we actually have? Okay, that's pretty good. Now, obviously, we don't have time to go into all the machinations of these characters down through 11,000 years of historical time, do we, right? You can do it on your own. There's Booktree carry amazing publications there on the way that they've done this. But there's something I've been purposely omitting to talk about in regards of all of this. Do you remember when I said that the adversary, these sons of the serpent, the serpent people have been chased into our solar system and they came to our planet, and then the people that were pursuing them took off and left, remember? That's not strictly true. They weren't stupid. And obviously if they've chased these people out of their own planet and into our another solar system, they're really going to make sure that none of these people survive, right? But for some reason they did have to leave relatively quickly. They didn't come to this planet and seek them out. But they probably did do scans of this planet and the solar system to find out if these people are still alive after they destroyed Tiamat. But Tiamat's destruction was creating so much electromagnetic disturbance in the solar system that these beings took off. And if you're into people like Nazim Haramein, the great physicist scientist, he's even talked about the fact that the sun is a black hole by which you do the time travel. Right? So they may have needed to get out when they got out, etc., etc., etc. There may be all sorts of reasons. But they knew that just in case these beings do exist on Earth, that they're there, they erected what is known as an etheric barrier around the Earth, around our Earth. And the magnetic key of that is the moon. And it's still there, by the way. And that is why no man has ever gone beyond the moon. You can go to the moon, but you can't go beyond it. And you never will. They can send a machine out there, but isn't it interested you that they still haven't gone out there as a human form? This is something that's been held from us. You can't. There's a barrier of energy up there around our Earth that's of an esoteric nature. It involves technology, yes, but a technology of an extremely advanced nature that even these aliens probably couldn't crack or get out. So this Earth was in quarantine. If you read C.S. Lewis, he goes into all of this about Earth being quarantined. And the name that he has for our planet is called Fulcandra, the silent planet. It has to be quarantined off from the rest of the 9 planets, because planets are not really material bodies, they're intelligences of a kind. And our planet is under quarantine, so this Armageddon, this inner war, can take place in sequestrament. Okay, just like you quarantine a sick patient. And this ethereal barrier around it is called the Stargate, or the real Stargate. See, the other side give you updates on how well they're doing to get out of it. It's called the movies. And this barrier is well known to the ancient alchemists and so on. And the symbol that has been used is again the serpent. That etheric barrier was known in Chinese astrology as the dragon's head and the dragon's tail. Anyone who knows about astrology knows the moon's nodes, the nodes of the moon. This has to do with the barrier, and you've always seen the protecting circle of the dragon used in mythology and folktale, right? And many people have dreams I've talked to have connections between the symbol of the moon and the symbol of the dragon, and they don't know why, you know? And then they read my material and go, my God, you just explained it, why I have those dreams. And the Native American Indians, the Zuni and the Hopi, call that barrier the Great Web in the Sky. Anybody ever familiar with that term that the Native American Indians use about a great web in the sky? That web in the sky is there. It's an etheric barrier put there about 50,000 years ago, but the original alien masters who came here didn't know that, right? They didn't know right away that this barrier was put there. They actually found out more in historical times, because they've been moving us forward to get up to the point where they can rebuild the technology. And if you look at history properly from that just one agenda, ladies and gentlemen, you will find out that almost everything that has been happening from 11,000 years has been doing that. You don't need Gene Roddenberry or some mystic to tell you why is it. Everybody, even the countercultural pundits and thinkers and activists, have been wondering why is it that our technological scientific ability is so much far in advance of our psychological, emotional and spiritual development. Because it's been pushed that way. That's why. Because some people are hell-bent on making it that way, who control the empires through the hierarchical system that Jordan Maxwell is the expert on, and other people have also right here in this conference today. You will hear people talking about this, going into these details. But you can put up many questions, but what's the answer? How did this all come about? Why is the eye at the top of the pyramid a reptilian eye? If you actually get a blow-up of the eye at the top of the pyramid of the dollar bill, it's not a human eye. Why are there 13 levels? You know, there's many, many things that a lot of people have not got into with this. Now, as I said, we don't have the time. Oh, yeah, and the Renaissance, which interestingly means rebirth, is a period where they were all patting themselves on the back. Yeah, lovely artwork and everything. Wonderful, right? But the Renaissance, what the occult agenda behind the Renaissance and the black nobility families of Italy was that this was the first time that they really were getting it together with the technology. It wasn't anything like what they needed, but it was like a first beginning. They were getting to the point where they realized it was recognizable, you know? And we call it the Renaissance, or they call it the Renaissance, the rebirth. Where finally some of the science and the scientists started to come together. It was looking like it was the beginning, rudimentary beginnings of what they originally had before the technology was lost. Now, we, as I said, don't have time to go through all 11,000 years of what they've been doing. I have to leave that to your own research. But I can draw one picture for you about a specific time that happened in England in the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th century, but specifically the 17th century, at the time of the Tudor dynasty. A big agenda, an important thing we need to know about concerning this matter took place. And it has to do with this character on the right, who's known as Sir John Dee, and he worked for the British government. And interestingly enough, he was also ambassador to the court of King James, and he would go as an ambassador to Queen Elizabeth I. He would go to different countries. And when he wrote back to her, at the bottom of any intelligence documents he gave, he wrote his signature 007. Because John Dee is the head of MI5. British Secret Service comes from the Tudor dynasty of the 15th century. Ian Fleming, who wrote James Bond, was a member of the Secret Service, and when he retired he thought, I want to write some books, why don't I write about my own organization? So he did, and what you're reading there, and more importantly the movies. Those James Bond movies, if you know how to watch those, they're telling you amazing stories. I mean, obviously you've got to wade through all the phallocratic, macho nonsense, but if you can manage to sit through that stuff, you're going to see something fascinating in those stories. I love them. Notice MI5's logo. Look at the pyramid and the eye at the top. See that?